Good evening. Okay. Hi, everyone. Welcome to 780U. It's so great to have all of you guys here tonight. We're going to wait for just a couple more people to join us, and then we'll start at 6:02. While everyone is waiting, please make sure you subscribe to our channels on WeChat, Facebook, Instagram, and Facebook. I'll send some links in the chat box for all of you guys to follow. All right, it's 6:02. Let's get started. Hi, everyone. Welcome again to 780U. We're really excited for tonight's event. It's the Critical Reading and Analysis of Fictional Prose event with our wonderful speaker, Terry. So we're going to get started in just a second. Really quickly, for next week, we have something really, really special. So instead of our usual open class, we're actually going to be doing a free exclusive trial class for our pre-algebra series. It's going to be called Pre-Algebra, Basic Math Properties from a Different Perspective. It's for grades 5 to 7. So rather than this webinar style, it will actually have your student be able to interact with our teacher and learn some foundational arithmetic properties. So you really don't want to miss this one. And I'll send the registration link to the chat box right now. So please feel free to sign up for this next free event. And we'll get started in just a second. All right. So today we are really, really glad to have Terry here to teach us how to critically read and analyze a piece of fictional prose. So we're going to be having a 15-minute Q&A session towards the end. So please jot down all of your questions during her presentation and stick around if you'd like to take advantage of that. We're also going to be giving away an exclusive coupon code at the end of this class for our critical reading and writing classes, also taught by our speaker, Terry. So make sure you stick around until the end of this event for that code. All right. So let's really quickly introduce our wonderful speaker. So this is Terry. She's an English teacher in the US and abroad and has 25 years of English teaching experience. She's also a model English language development specialist credential. She's taught all grade levels, including university levels, and has been an online teacher for 7 years, so has a lot of experience with this current online form of teaching. She also holds a teaching credential from the state of California and a master's in curriculum and instruction. And Terry's goal is to teach learners how to think critically and participate in their own learning process. Both students and parents at 780U have given really great feedback on her encouraging teaching style and patience. And so without further ado, Terry, would you like to take it over? I'm going to stop screen sharing so that you can share your screen.
Okay, thank you very much, Anne. Let's see there. Good evening. How is everyone today? Hi, my name is Terry El Masri. I just need to make sure that I can, give me just one moment, please, while I bring this up again. And there we go. Okay, there we go. All right, is everyone able to see the PowerPoint here? Is that visible to everyone? Thank you. Okay, great. Here we go. We're going to get started then. Sorry, I have this actually in my my Google account. Um, let's get this up here. Okay. Okay, my name is Terry L. Musri. I am an English teacher, and I have recently started working with 7EDU, which I really like. I'm teaching the critical reading and writing class, and tonight I am going to present a lesson on a text, and then sort of um, present and show a little bit how I go about teaching something like this particular kind of text in a class. And then we're going to talk a little bit about the literary analysis that would be the follow-up assignment for this text. The text we're looking at tonight is called Shooting an Elephant by George Orwell. When we get to this part of the lesson, the students are familiar with quite a few strategies. We've talked quite a bit about close reading in class. This is something I start immediately in class. And just to sort of review close reading, this is a technique or strategy that we've been using for quite some time in English classes. It is a careful and sorry, my dog. It is a careful and sustained interpretation of a brief passage or text. Normally, we focus in on a small amount of text and we read it 3 times and we analyze it as we read. The close reading strategy emphasizes the single and the particular over the general. So again, looking at a small portion of text. We look at syntax, we look at word choice, and we also look at formal structures. When this lesson is taking place, the students will have already read the narrative independently 1 time straight through. They have also reviewed, and we have gone over in class and used the 75 rhetorical questions on several occasions. They are questions that the students are familiar with. They also have in class gone over the literary analysis rubric. They know what the essay looks like. They know what is expected. In terms of schema, prior to this lesson, the students will already have a sense of the historical context, and in particular, British imperialism. This particular narrative, this is really important that students understand the context of the story in order to be able to appreciate the story, to analyze it, and then of course to write the literary analysis. We've also talked about style, the specific style, including syntax of the story. We've talked a lot about vocabulary and word choice. The students have read the story straight through. So our goals, and I'm going to just teach this now from this point on so that you can kind of see how I do it. I would ask the students to read the goals, and I would read the goal to them aloud as well. And the goal is to analyze the ways in which an author conveys a perspective on imperialism through the interaction of individuals, ideas, and events in a reflective essay, and to identify tone. Our objectives, the way we're going to get there is that we are going to be using all of the analyzing strategies that we've been going over for the last 3 weeks. So everyone, let's take a look at the essay prompt. You know, I like to start with the essay prompt so that you have it in your head when you're reading the story for your 2nd time and 3rd time, and when we're analyzing the story. Because you're going to be thinking about all these pieces of evidence that you're going to get from your story to work into your essay. Our prompt is to analyze the ways in which an author conveys a perspective on imperialism through the interaction of individuals, ideas, and events in an analysis essay. This sounds a lot like our goal. They're one and the same. So here we go. Now that you have that prompt in mind, does anyone have any questions about this prompt? You know, I like to dissect things. And if anybody has any specific questions about this prompt, I know that you saw it. I sent it out to you. If you have any specific questions about it, though, let's answer those right now. Okay, we're going to go on. We're going to move forward. As a preview, students, just a quick review. Remember all these rhetorical questions that we use in class when we read and analyze. 75 rhetorical analysis questions. Purpose. Today, we're going to really focus in on the events or occasions that created the need or opportunity for this text. This is a really important question for us to answer. And we've talked about this a little bit when we went over the historical context and talked a little bit about Orwell, his experiences, working in Burma, and British imperialism as an overarching idea, okay? Sort of the concept of imperialism. We talked about British imperialism in particular, and then we talked about British imperialism in this particular part of the world, okay? Which helps us answer this purpose question here, number 2. We also, under our category audience, the question that we're kind of focusing in here, our rhetorical question, is what values does the audience hold that the author seeks to appeal to? This is a question that we will talk about and we will answer as we work our way through the text and analyze it. The other rhetorical question, categories, subject, what are the principal lines of reasoning? This will take us back, of course, to our rhetorical devices that we've talked about, ethos, logos, and pathos. Those are sort of the classical rhetorical devices that, that authors use. And this is important because this is a personal narrative. And so we will talk quite a bit about those 3 rhetorical devices here. Structure and organization, what rhetorical methods are used to develop the argument. We will identify those as we go through. We also have tone. Tone is particularly important here since we're talking about perspective and author's tone. Author's bias, we will also want to make sure that we understand what the author's stake in this message is. Why is this important to the author? This is especially true, author's bias, when we're reading personal narratives. This one is something that we kind of want to zero in on. We'll also look at style. We also want to talk about the complexity of the text itself in terms of its syntax and word choice, and also specific rhetorical devices other than our ethos, logos, and pathos, which we're all familiar with now. So let's take a look at the story itself. We always start with our essential questions. So I would ask you all to please read through these historical questions here on the left. Make sure that you understand the questions. If you have questions about these points, let's bring them up now and discuss them. Okay. As we read, hold on one second. There we go. Sorry about that. Okay, is that better? Yes. All right, very good. Okay, I'm just going to move this over here. Okay. So we all know how to do close reading, right? We've done it before. We've been doing it a lot, and we're all really, really good at close reading. This will be your second reading. Remember, when we do close reading, we read a total of 3 times. You've had your independent reading, that was number 1. Now we're going to do number 2, and then you will also later go back and read it a 3rd time, and that will be something that will be assigned to you. You have 3 minutes to read straight through this text. You also can have annotations tools to use. I want you to read slowly, take your time, and you want to be referencing the essential questions as you do your close reading, and you want to be marking up your text according to the annotation skills that we are familiar with and that we have been using. Okay. Second reading for close reading is, again, in a way, an independent reading for the students. They read, this is their second time, and they also will be annotating. You remember that your annotation skills are up at the top in your taskbar, and it says annotate. And if you click on annotate, you can draw. And I know some of you like to use your stamp, and you take your stamp and you like to put a star by something, and that's how you annotate. And that's fine, that's good. Some of you also like to use the spotlight, and some of you also like to use text and you write comments in there. All of those are good. Okay, 3 minutes are up. And I have, I'm sorry, I have a question for Anne. How do I move my, I'm not sure why you don't have the annotation skills in here. I'm not sure. Maybe Anne could answer that question for us.
I'm sorry, I'm also not super clear. Somebody else, is one of the other panels able to answer this question?
It's a webinar. Yeah, it's a webinar. I think that it's because of the kind of presentation that we're doing here. When I'm with the students in class, we all have a taskbar that can be moved around the screen, and one of the tools there is annotate. And the students can put, they can just write, they can draw, they can put text, and then a lot of them really like to use the stamps. And then everybody has his or her own stamp, and then I know exactly who has done that, and they just kind of like to use those too. So that's fun. So the students have read for 3 minutes. They have highlighted, they have annotated. Next slide. The students know, so at this point I wouldn't even really have to direct them. I would change the slide at the 3-minute break, and then they would continue. They would look, and they know the process. They start with the essential questions on the left-hand side of the screen. They read them carefully. If they have questions, the questions go into the chat box and I answer them. Again, 3 minutes to work through this page of text, annotating. Three minutes are up. Let me get, oh, sorry. Okay, next slide, same process. The students know, they immediately go to essential questions on the left-hand side of the screen, and they're going to work through and highlight, annotate. The annotation process is something that we do the first class session, and we do it every class session. And the students are familiar with it, and they know exactly what they need to be looking for because of the questions. And they have 5 or 6 specific annotation marks that they can use. They don't have to use them, but they can use them, and they each have their own meaning. So we've read through the 3rd page here. Because this is a close reading and we are focused on a very small amount of text at one time, we are going to just read these 3 pages and then go back. So we're back at our first, the first part of the story, and we are going to now figure out exactly what's going on here. So I'm going to call on Jane, and Jane is going to take the first essential question, and she is going to explain to the whole group. Oops, sorry. She will explain to the whole group about the historical context. How does our understanding of imperialism inform our understanding of the author's purpose and tone? She will then direct the class to each of her highlighted words, phrases, sentences, perhaps even a whole section, and explain to us exactly how the author's purpose and tone is exemplified here throughout the text. Then I will call on another student, and that student will do the same thing for setting. The next student will do it for vocabulary and word choice. We're looking for rhetorical devices. The students should have circled and highlighted the particular instances of alliteration in the text and the language, the sentence variety here as well. The next student then would come in and talk about textual devices like repetition, similarities, contradictions, and particularly irony here. Okay. Then the next student would be asked to come in and answer this question, always referencing what they have highlighted in the text. I would then also ask one student to give us a list of 5 words, minimum 5 words in this text that convey a sense of hatred or a sense of resentment. Let's see. Anne, can I get to the be able to move the slide?
You should be able to,
Oh,
yeah, press
okay,
the.
sorry. It doesn't come up every time. Sorry about that. Okay, sorry. There we go. Okay, so we've gone through a very, very small amount of text, okay? I did reproduce the whole story here. We're not going to look at the whole story. So we are going to, let's see, excuse me. Okay, so we're going to move on a bit. We're going to come back to the essay prompt. And this again, we would have a class discussion, a whole group discussion about the prompt and really figure out exactly what the prompt is asking us by taking it apart and looking at its parts. The overarching theme of our essay and our investigation into the text is this perspective on imperialism. And we need to make sure that we understand exactly how the author conveys this idea of imperialism, not just his thoughts about it, but how he gets the idea that, what is day-to-day life like under imperialism. Because it's a personal narrative, our focus is primarily the author's feelings, but he definitely brings in other characters and events. And so we do get a sense of how other people feel it, but because it falls into personal narrative, that focus is primarily on him and his feelings. We go through and we identify the individuals in addition to the narrator that we might need to pull into our essay. Many of the people or the characters in the story are crowds and groups. So we want to make sure that we all understand how we can talk about crowds and groups rather than individuals, because this term here, whoops, sorry. This term individuals in this case is going to also refer to crowds and groups in this story. We talk about the ideas in the story, imperialism. We talk about author's bias. We talk about tone, the author's attitude toward his subject. And we talk about the events. In this case, of course, the big event is the shooting of the elephant. So any questions at this point? Does anyone have any questions about the text itself? What happens in the text? Does anyone have any questions about the sort of when and where of the story? Where is this happening? When is this happening? Okay, so once the essay prompt is clear and everybody feels comfortable with the essay prompt, and they are starting to formulate an idea or ideas about how they're going to begin working on the essay. Let's see here. And I need, okay. And generally that part of class is quite a long discussion to make sure that everybody is really, really clear on it. So the next step is that we move into the rubric. The students are familiar with the rubric, they've seen it before, but we take a few minutes and we want to, we go over exactly what a 4 means in terms of the rubric. The students are very familiar with the attention grabber, the hook, particularly the middle school students, and this is something that they are really, really good at because they understand basic hooks. Starting an essay with a question, that's an okay and very basic rhetorical hook. So we talk about other ways to grab the audience, to surprise them, to start with a statement that is perhaps a little bit shocking or surprising to grab the reader. Then we move on to the thesis statement, and the thesis statement is sometimes a little bit difficult. We have gone over it many times. We talk a lot about the thesis statement and the purpose of it, and the structure of it. We talk about evidence and examples, the number of pieces of evidence that students should have in their essay, the kinds of evidence, quotes and citations, the closing paragraph, the conclusion, and how we, whoops, I'm sorry, I jumped ahead, restate our main idea. Also conventions. We talk about grammar. We make sure that everyone is clear on using spell check and doing a grammar check and reading aloud. We talk a lot in class about reading aloud so that students hear errors, and also citations. And students are familiar with APA citations, the formatting, and particularly for quotations. Then we just do a bit of a review for the introductory paragraph. This is the hardest paragraph for the students to write. So the way I present it is we talk about the upside down triangle, where we start with a broad statement that introduces your topic and perhaps hints at the thesis, and also includes a rhetorical device to kind of hook your reader and bring your reader in. Then it narrows to background and explanation depending on the text. This situates your reader. In this case, I would ask students to make sure that they include a sentence to situate the reader and explain the situation of imperialism and the author's predicament. Then we narrow it to their position, and they will then produce in class a 3-pronged thesis statement setting up the structure of the essay. For a 5-paragraph essay, literary analysis, I would require a 3-pronged thesis statement, 3 main points in the thesis statement, and then so that each body paragraph then dealt with 1 point. Okay. Then I would assign students to read the text in full a 3rd time. I would ask them to complete the introductory paragraph and body paragraph number 1, submit it to the class website, and then for the next class meeting, I would bring those up in class and we would go over them. And as a group, as a whole group, we analyze the student work and take it apart in a nice way and make suggestions about how we could make it more complete. We do this while using the rubric very carefully to make sure that we're hitting all of the points on the rubric and that we are doing it correctly. And that would end my class. I would ask the students to be prepared to share and review drafts in class for the following week. And then I would excuse the students from class. And that's the end of my lesson. Thank you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Terry, for such a detailed and comprehensive presentation. So now we're going to move on into the Q&A session of this open class. And so we'll wait a second. For anyone who's attending this class right now, please feel free to send your questions through the Q&A box or the chat box, and we'll get to them as soon as possible. Okay, just a question to start off for you, Terry. We want to know what are some good books that you would recommend for students to kind of practice their critical reading and analysis on for, say, like a student in like grade 5?
Grade 5, the K-A-Y, the K. The Pearl is a must. Some 5th graders can definitely read To Kill a Mockingbird, not all 5th graders. If it's a 5th grader who reads well, I would recommend that book. I would also recommend Romeo and Juliet. And I would also recommend essays. I think it's really important for students of all ages to read essays because it's essays that we can really take apart because they tend to be short and they are good. They really teach students to think structurally about writing, how an organization, and complexity. So there are quite a few books out there, books of essays for middle schoolers and books of essays for high schoolers, and you can Google them. Also, I think the Percy Jackson series is really fun too. The Percy Jackson series really helps us when we talk about rhetorical devices in class. It really gives students a lot of great ideas about the kinds of rhetorical devices and allusions, because students really need to understand allusions when they read. And so those books really help with understanding the concept of allusions, historical, biblical. And let's see, other books. Roll of Thunder, Hear My Cry is an important one to read. Is that enough? Should I can put together a list and send it out. Sounder is a really important book for middle schoolers to read.
Yeah, that's great. We actually had a follow-up question for specifically what books would you recommend for like a 6th grader? Maybe out of the ones that you've already mentioned or other ones that you haven't mentioned.
Yeah, well, a 6th grader, you definitely To Kill a Mockingbird and Sounder. Those two could be a 5th grader, but definitely a 6th grader should have read those. Also, some of the some others, the shorter Steinbeck works, Cannery Row, some of the shorter Hemingway novels, um, and also at sixth grade, I would also introduce authors like Faulkner, Sound and the Fury. I think that they should be introduced to that style, particularly the Sound and the Fury. Grapes of Wrath is a must. It's on most core lists. Also, sorry, I just went out right out of the title went right out of my head. It's Grapes of Wrath and Brave New World in 1984 for a mature sixth grader.
Got it. That's a great list. Thank you. And then another question. So how long would you say a sixth grade writing essay should be? So like how many paragraphs like should this essay be?
This particular essay, I would require a 5-paragraph essay to start with. Once students perfected that, the 5-paragraph essay, and it is granted a kind of generic essay, and they are showing me that they understand structure, they understand the thesis, what a thesis statement is, they understand transitions, they understand just that format of a 5-paragraph essay. After that, if it was an essay, I generally go from 5 to 8 paragraphs. If it is a narrative, it's generally minimum of 5 pages.
Got it. Great. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then another question. Student asks, how can I improve my grammar when I'm writing an essay or paragraph?
Well, I'm not sure that's the time to improve your grammar because you're focused on the structure of the essay and the content of the essay. You have a format, you have a prompt, and you're focusing on that. But to answer your question, I think the best way, and it's really simple, is that after you've written something and you have a good solid rough draft, you should read to yourself. You go somewhere where it's quiet and you read your essay aloud to yourself. And I have my students practice that in class. We read things aloud so that you hear it, because you know more grammar than you think you do. You understand it a lot better than you think you do, and you will hear it. The other thing to do is to do peer editing, which we also do in class, and that when we share our essays and other students can say, hey, I'm not sure that works right there. And then we talk about that specific grammatical issue right then and there.
Got it. That makes sense. Thank you.
Mhm,
And for the reading list that you mentioned earlier, like if you could put together a list of the books that each grade from like 5 to 7
mhm,
should be recommended to read. If you could do that for us, Terry, we can actually send that out through our newsletter
sure.
to all the attendees on this call right now. So
Mhm,
I'm going to go ahead and quickly send the link to subscribe to our newsletter right now
mhm.
if you wanted that list of books that you guys should read.
Okay.
And then we'll continue to wait for questions to roll in.
Okay. Can I just, while we're waiting, I just wanted to say that I tend to be a little bit um, of a I like the classics for required reading. I mean, we want students, of course, to read for pleasure always, but I think that certain books are on core lists for a reason, and I think they're important to make sure that we all have a body of knowledge and that we are familiar with certain works. As a community and as a country, and it's really important that we all read the same book. So my lists tend to be a little bit, they stick to kind of the core reading selections.
Got it. That's great. Um, Another question. So for this class specifically, will students be reading on their own time, like as homework, or will it be also reading during class?
We do both. I do require quite a bit of reading outside of class, but because we do close reading strategies, um, many times students will read something the second or third time in class. I also, though, really believe strongly that particularly middle schoolers, they still need to hear language read aloud to them, just like small children do. It's important for them to hear somebody read. So I try to mix it up. I do require a lot of outside reading, but we also read in class. We do, I read aloud. I ask students to read. We do quiet, independent reading. Sometimes we do popcorn reading where we go from one student to another. And I try to do a variety of, reading ways of reading so that they get a good balance there.
Great, great, thank you. A follow-up question to that, actually. You mentioned during the presentation and just now that close reading is like you read 3 times, right? Is there a reason
Mhm.
for that? Like, what's the method behind this?
Well, the method is repetition. Repetition is really important, particularly when students in school, reading selections tend to be slightly above what students are accustomed to, what's easier for student. The point is to always just challenge them slightly with text. But if you do that, you want to make sure that they are understanding the text. And so the reading 3 times is simply repetition. They read it once, they read it a second time, they get a little bit more, and then with discussion and then a third reading, they come away with a much deeper, much more meaningful understanding of the text. And another part of the methodology behind that too is um, when students read a small part of text and discuss it more than one time, they tend to make connections to other texts and real life and their own lives, their personal lives, and that is something that is lacking often. Students read something and they see it in isolation. The close reading strategies um, help students see, oh, I read this, but this makes me think of this. And then I can make connections there. And that's part of the methodology behind that strategy.
Gotcha. Thank you. Student asks, do you read and comment on the students' writing homework?
Yes, yes, I do. The essays, though, we do go over in class. They are anonymous, and we look at them and we take them apart. Um, but when students turn in a final essay, I do go over them pretty carefully and I do make comments. And on occasion, if I feel a student has perhaps missed something, I will ask a student to do a rewrite.
Great, great. Thank you. Do we have any more questions from any of the attendees? We'll give it like another like 20 seconds, 30 seconds. Oh, a student asks, how many students do we have in this class?
It varies. In this class, I think I have 8 in my critical reading and writing series. It's 8.
Gotcha. Thank you. And we have another question. Do you have any tips on reading, writing essays, or annotating?
The biggest tip, the best tip is the more you read, the better you read. Um, And it's simple, but it's really, really true. It's very important to read every single day. It's important to read in different genres and different domains. That includes fiction, nonfiction. Essays are extremely important. The more you read, the better your reading skills become. And also you start making those connections to other things. In terms of annotating, um, I think that students should practice annotating a variety of texts, and you can print something out on the computer. You can take an old book maybe, and you can look up annotation skills. And I do a lesson on annotation skills. They're really simple. They're really basic, and you do it 2 or 3 times. You practice with the notation marks, and you just use circles, you use underlines, you use question marks, exclamation points, directional arrows, really basic symbols, and you go through and you practice and you just keep doing it and you keep doing it. And each time you do it, you use a text that is just a little bit more difficult, kind of pushes you and stretches you. It sort of forces you to work a little bit harder, and you will be doing it in no time without even thinking. And in my group, I've just been doing this for, I think it's the third or fourth week, and already I don't even have to tell my students like, okay, they just start. I try to explain the whole annotation, and they're like, we're good," and they mark that text up um, like crazy because they practice at it and they do it every day. It's about every day and a variety of kinds of texts.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Terry. So that's about all the time that we have left. We're right on schedule. And so, really quickly, I know all of you guys are here because you're interested in hopefully taking this class with Terry, as well as other instructors, the critical reading and writing class that we are offering. And so, I'm going to go ahead and drop those links. They all start in September, and so you're right on schedule if that's something that you're interested in joining. I'm going to drop those links in the chat, and then also because all of you guys have stuck around this entire time, we are actually offering an exclusive coupon code for, I believe, yeah, for 12% off on our critical reading and writing classes. So I'm also going to drop that in the chat box right now. And so to redeem this coupon code, you will have to contact our student mentor at info@7edu.org to type in the code and just simply redeem it. And then for any other questions that you may have for us or for Terry, feel free to email us at that same email. Um, and to answer your question in the chat box, Angela, I just sent the code in the chat box. Let me know if you guys can see it. All right. All right, awesome. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, Terry, especially for being here with us.
Thank
And
you.
have a great night, everyone. And hope you guys tune into our classes in the future.
Can't wait to see you in class. Bye.
Bye, Terry. Thank you.
Bye bye.